風よ吹けクロノア風になれクロノア風に乗ってさ冒険だプレイステーション風のクロノア
One of money.
Huzzah everybody, I am KenMeisterLP and welcome to the next Let's Play I'm going to be tackling for the channel. I did say after Super Metroid that I wanted to branch out and do other games, and I'm still holding on to that statement, damn it. Last time I tackled Super Mario Land 2, which was a sequel I was meant to follow up on much earlier than I should have. And today we're going to tackle something a lot of you have probably never heard of. This game is called Klonoa, Door to Phantomile. It's an obscure PS1 platformer that spawned a few sequels, and unfortunately, due to really awful sales, unfortunately, the series kind of had an abrupt end with the remake back in 2009. But it's a good series, despite what sales will lead you to believe. A friend introduced me to this game not long ago after I figured out that this game was on sale on PSN for like $5. I played it, and I enjoyed what I played, honestly. This is like one of the most charming and most passion-filled games I've ever played, quite frankly. And I'll be playing this, and sometime later down the road, also the sequel, because I did enjoy this game enough to go and buy the sequel, and it's, spoilers, a bit better than this one. But we're gonna start off with the first game, god damn it. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start a new file. Now, I've only played through this game twice, once for the initial blind playthrough, and then the other playthrough was for me getting prepped up for the Let's Play. So, I'll have a bit of familiarity when it comes to the level design and just how the game works overall. But, otherwise, like, I'm still kind of relatively new to the series. This isn't something like, say, Metroid or Mega Man where I've played through on repeat occasions to where I know the games inside and out. I'm still trying to find new things, so to say. But, despite that statement, this will be a 100% playthrough, and what that will apply to, I'll be covering as we get into the meat and potatoes of the game. Just gonna type in our name here. I don't think I'm gonna be adjusting the options here too much. And this was before the golden age of surround sound, so we're just gonna stick with stereo because that's the next best thing for 1997 standards, obviously. And without further ado, let's go ahead and begin this bad boy. Klonoa, Door to Phantomile. I'm playing this through the PS3, and I guess because I put this on smoothing, like, some of the text might look a little weird. Like, I read those O's as E's for a second. Sometimes I can't remember my dreams, though I'm sure I saw them. Where did these dreams go? But I remember this one dream as clearly as if it were reflected in a mirror. And this game has, for the time, and to an extent, to this day, some pretty nice looking CD, if I'm being real here. 240i, but what can you do, really? And there's our cute little furry protagonist, cat, bunny thing. I'm still not sure what the hell Klonoa is supposed to be honest, and I'm pretty sure most people don't either. But of course, we've got our little plot device here that more or less sets up the events of the game, I guess you could say. Oh god, this thief. Never mind about you being so cute. Jesus, put those things away. Hi, I'm a child and I like to play with my random windy friends. I don't know who this thing is, but I'm going to trust them with my life anyway. I don't know. Whoa, slow down a bit, game. We're just getting started. Oh god. That's the stuff of nightmares. Have to put in the fake dream trope there somewhere. Don't worry, this isn't like Mega Man X7 levels of bad when it comes to loading. What's that? It's from Bell Hill. Sounds like something crashed. It's just like my dream. Let's go, Klonoa. So, yeah, if you couldn't already tell, this game has its own fictional language, which I believe has an actual name. It's called Phantomile. And, if you're accustomed to games like Banjo-Kazooie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say, like, the language is, like, quite literally gibberish. But apparently it has its own, like, dictionary for it and everything. Like, if you play, like, close attention to, like, the cutscenes and how it's synced up with the dialogue, it actually goes in perfect sync with it, honestly. So, yeah, I mean, it's one thing to make gibberish, but it's another thing to actually make it its own goddamn language. But, anywho, this is Klonoa. I'm not even really talking about the game yet, am I? It's your kind of, cutesy-ish looking platformer game. I don't know, its art style kind of reminds me a bit of Yoshi's Story, where the sprites are, like, they're 2D sprites, but they have this kind of, like, effect on them where they kind of look 3D-ish looking, kind of, sort of, and they have depth depending on where they are on the plane compared to where the player is. But the main gameplay of Klonoa, which I'll get to in just a second after I go through this lighthouse thingamajig. How dare you go through my tower without even saying hello? Hold it right there. Oof! Oof. Hey kid, you should have come sneaking around here. Oops, I'm sorry. Apology accepted. I'm Beluda Mason. So, have you come to look at my beautiful Lafice outside? It's my masterpiece. Lafice? Huh? Don't know her, eh? She's the legendary diva who sings the Song of Rebirth. Nope, I didn't know that. Kids these days. You see this tower here? I'm building it so that I can reach the Moon Kingdom. You see, that's where Lafice lives. Oh, I wonder if it really is possible to reach the Moon Kingdom with this. Silence! We just asked a question, Jesus. Right. Klonoa, I think we should get going before he has his pedophilia sights set on us. I will, thanks. So long. Oh god, I just put a bad image in everybody's head. But anywho, as I was saying, the gameplay of Klonoa involves, god damn, this really is kind of like a Yoshi game slash Kirby game, isn't it? Basically, you toss your foes, and there's a variety of different actions you can do, based off of, what you plan to do with the enemy in your possession. So, for example, I could throw it at enemies a la Mario 2 USA-ish style, and I can also use it to give myself a double jump, and sacrifice of basically dropping the enemy to its death. I can also use the enemy to throw it into objects in the foreground and background. And that's another really interesting thing about Klonoa too, is that, like, yeah, like, there's a lot of 2.5D games later down in, like, the 6th and 5th generation of consoles, but, like, they're 2.5D in style only. Klonoa has this kind of unique approach where, oftentimes or not, you'll be going through, like, these straight pathways, and you could actually change planes depending on if you see another like pathway going off into the background or foreground. And I think it's kind of cool. And with that in mind, you could also throw your enemies into said foreground and background, and you'll be doing this kind of maneuver to solve puzzles and shit. Klonoa and its sequels, more or less, it's kind of a puzzle platformer series. Like, yeah, there's actual platforming and challenges here and there, but there are times where the game's going to have you sit down and like use your noggin on occasion to like solve puzzles and shit. And the ones in the sequels, especially Klonoa 2, oh my lord, I think I've spent like my fair share of like 5 to 10 minutes just trying to sit down and figure out how things work. And despite this game's short length, like on average it should only take you like 3 hours to beat. Like this gimmick is utilized so well within its span of time that, you know, it never feels like it's terribly drawn out or forced or gets stale too quickly because of, again, in part due to the game's shorter length. There's also not too many levels either. Like, I think there's about, I want to say 14, including the final boss. Yeah. But if you could tell by that cutscene we ran into earlier, this platformer is actually a bit more story-driven than you'd be led to believe, based off its cutesy appearance. It's kind of got this interesting narrative/world-building aspect to it, where you'll meet different characters along the way, and some of them will definitely leave good bits of impression onto the player. Basically, what Baloo was telling us is that there's this singer named Laphicet, who every now and then sings this tune called the Song of Rebirth, and it's supposed to be this thing that rejuvenates the world and brings it world peace or some shit. Think like the pilgrimage from Final Fantasy X, for example, where you have this heroine going around and basically trying to go to all these summons and shit to basically solve world problems and whatever. Okay, maybe not quite like that, but like you get the idea. She's like a plot important like character basically, and she may or may not come into significant play later down the road. But as far as what I was talking about when it comes to 100%, you've noticed that every now and then I'll hit these bubbles, and they have these prisoners pop out of them, Phantomile prisoners, if you may. And basically, in order to get 100% completion in this game and to unlock the extra secret at the end, you have to collect all 6 of them in each level. One shitty thing about Klonoa, unfortunately, is that if you happen to go through the level and you miss like maybe 1 or 2 of them, you cannot revisit the level again until you've more or less beat the game, which I think is kind of stupid. Klonoa 2 thankfully fixes this issue altogether, but it's kind of a pain in the ass, no less. But yeah, the first few visions aren't too bad. I'd like to say it's like one of those games similar to like Mega Man X1, for example, where you have like the stages laid out in such a way to where the simple terrain will kind of like give you plenty of room to play around with the enemies and get used to the mechanics. Because I'll tell you what, like, you know, the first time I played this, I certainly wasn't accustomed to the gameplay at all. I don't even really think it was until my second playthrough where I got a full grasp on like how everything worked. And especially using the flutter jump, it's kind of, goddamn, I'm drawing so many parallels to Yoshi's story here. Jesus Christ. Yeah, like this flutter jump here, for example. If you hold the jump button as you're suspended in the air, you can kind of use this jump to sort of save your life. And what's kind of interesting about the flutter jump in this is that You don't really need it, as far as I know, to beat the game. I know in Klonoa 2 you have to use it to some good extent, but like... yeah, it's things like that that kind of threw off my platforming a little bit. Another thing too is, and one of the things that I also had a hard time trying to get accustomed to playing Klonoa for the first playthrough or so, is that Klonoa doesn't really work off of momentum like, say, Mario and Sonic do, for example. He basically has running speed altogether, unless you're going down slopes, as you saw there earlier. He kind of picked up a little bit of speed going up that. I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything, because it would suck if I got to the end of the level and didn't have anything by the end of it. But I lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Despite this, like, there's still kind of like this momentum to Klonoa when he stops for some reason, and for the longest time, I had the roughest time getting used to that, because basically what I'm trying to imply here is that, like, yeah, you don't pick up speed unless you're going up or down slopes, because you don't have a run button or dash button in this game, no less. And for some reason, I don't know what exactly influences this, but like as you're running and you come to a stop, or sometimes just jumping and then running and coming to a stop, Klonoa will just sort of randomly like skid like he's on ice, and I swear to God that's cost me so many fucking lives. Thankfully that's kind of resolved in Klonoa 2, so maybe that was something that wasn't entirely intentional on the devs part, I guess, but like, it's so annoying, especially in the last two visions where you're going on these like little miniature platform thingamajigs, and I'm sitting here like barely keeping my footing up together and whatnot, because like, god damn it, Klonoa done slipped again. But yeah, to also kind of go back to the story a little bit, you know, what I was talking about with Baloo and Laphicet and what have you. This game is a little bit more story-driven than your average platformer. Like, I wouldn't say it's like on Mega Man Zero levels of like depth or deep or anything, even though this game does kind of have its own fair share of underlying themes to it. And I just went in a complete fucking circle. That's what I was talking about when it comes to like using like other pathways in the plane to go into the foreground and background. But anywho, back to what I was saying, because I have a bad, obnoxious habit of just constantly interrupting my flow. There are, as I had said before, characters that you will come to know and love along the way. I know some of the characters in this game have left quite an impact on players, you know, having grown up on this. I really did wish I grew up on this, by the way. Like, it's such a good game. It's so cute and full of charm. But it's also kind of got its own fair share of darker moments, and even some traces of character development. I don't want to spoil too much, especially if you haven't seen gameplay of this before, but if you don't have too many expectations going into this, needless to say, this game will definitely take you on a trip. That's for goddamn sure. But anywho, looks like we're eavesdropping in onto some kind of conversation. I'm honored, Gradius, your darkness. Laphis? And by later down the road, I mean in like literally at the end of part 1. I can't allow you to save the world with your silly Song of Rebirth. Jesus, what are you, Sylvanas? There's no need for your song. I shall imprison you in darkness and destroy the world. Well now, my joker, where's that pendant? Sire! This This is strange. I can't seem to find it. What? What are they looking for? They said a pendant. Who are they? Well, goddamn, they have impeccable hearing. Lefis is in our hands. Joka, I'm counting on you to take care of the rest. Yes, sire. What are they up to? And... well, that's an exit if I've ever seen one. Tisk. I see that we have puny mice here, and I can't seem to make up my voice for voice acting. Well, I'll have to deal with you. Who are you? How many times are you going to ask this, Klonoa? Oh my, kids these days don't have manners. Too bad. I'm going to have to punish you now. Everybody's blowing out gaskets for just asking simple little questions. Jeez, leave the poor child alone. Oh, my dear Rongo Lango, watch your behind. Totally not subtle way of giving away the boss weakness. But anywho, we have our first boss. As you could tell from entering a level, each set of levels in the game are divided into visions. It's almost kind of like Sonic when you think about it. You have your vision 1 and 2, and at the end of 2, you have your boss battle. This isn't applicable for every Klonoa game, mind you, but in the case of this one, yes it is. For the most part, a lot of bosses usually tend to evolve around you picking up enemies and throwing them at your opponents. And generally very noticeable areas, like his back there, for example. Basically find a shiny part or the most obvious looking weakness or weak point or whatever, and these bosses shouldn't give you too much of a run for your money. I'd argue that, like, the bosses are definitely some of the harder portions of the game, at least the last few bosses. Like, I don't know, the first 4 bosses I've never had trouble with. They don't take long to beat at all. But once you get down to the nitty-gritty and start fighting the endgame bosses, they can actually kind of give you a run for your money, not gonna lie. Like, they're not terribly easy, but they're not like super duper pushovers either, unless you know what you're doing at least. Well, they certainly didn't look far from that pedant. You let a kid fucking scoop up a pendant in, like, probably the most obvious place, and you didn't even bother to look there. Oh, Klonoa, you've really done it this time. What have I done? That's the most appropriate response. This is the crest of the Moon Kingdom. The Moon Kingdom? Yeah, if you couldn't already tell, Klonoa is a very curious character. He's going to be asking a lot of questions, and I'd like to say, like, as a narrative tool, he does a very good job in helping the world flesh itself out, because again, there's a decent bit of world building here and there. Nothing too terribly complex, but it's enough to get this game more depth than, say, like, Sonic or Mario or whatever. Klonoa, what about that guy in that tower? That's right. Hey, Grandpa, is there really a Moon Kingdom? Perhaps there is, but then again, maybe not. Stop speaking as subtext, damn it. Well, I'm worried about that Gadius character who kidnapped a girl. Either way, we need to take matters into our own hands now. Klonoa, tell Warlock Force's Granny about this. Okay, I'm on my way. The Moon Kingdom, Why can't you just tell us it exists? Okay, so we're doing good as far as Phantomile prisoners are concerned, so That's all good and dandy. I was about to say, I'm gonna stab myself if I forgot, like, one along the way. Alright, so, yeah, with that being said, that's going to be the end of Vision 1. And stay tuned next time for Let's Play Klonoa on the PlayStation 1, where we will go to the Forlock Forest and see if we can find any more answers about the Moon Pendant. The Moon Pendant. Laphis. All the shit happening right now. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.